Here back with another video. We are going to try to go to Watsonville on the bike. This is going to be about a 60-mile bike ride. I want to get to the beach, chill at the beach for a little bit, then come home. We're going to go out Redwood Retreat like we have previously, but we're going to see what we can do and how far we can go. I am kind of kitted up for a really long day. I don't know how long this is going to take. This is kind of an adventure ride, so join me on this adventure. Hi everyone, voiceover Tanner here. By this point, I was about 10 miles into the ride. Up until now, it had been a familiar route along Redwood Retreat Road, but instead of making my usual right, I took a left onto Mount Madonna Road. This was my first time riding this route, and my first time biking to Watsonville, so I had no idea what was waiting for me. That's when the real climb began. As you can see on the left side of the screen, the road gets steep almost immediately. Looking back, I underestimated how difficult this climb would be. At the time, I figured it would just be another hill. It was not. You'll watch me grind away for the next minute before taking my first of many breaks throughout the day, and honestly, I still have no idea how much climbing was left ahead. We're picking up the ride about 0.8 miles further up the road. It took me much longer than I expected to get here. Between the steep grades and the number of breaks I had to take, every bit of progress felt hard-earned. You may notice the telemetry gauges have shifted slightly in this clip. That's because I have just started using telemetry overlay, which lets me add all the ride data you see on the screen. Things like speed, heart rate, elevation, and distance. Looking at my heart rate now, you can tell just how hard I was working. Then I reached what would become the biggest challenge of the entire ride. As we approach the sign on the right, the pavement suddenly ends and Mount Madonna Road turns into gravel. Since this was my first time riding the route, I had no idea this was coming. That immediately raised a new question. Could my road bike even make it through? I'd packed spare tubes just in case, but that wasn't what worried me most. I was more concerned about losing traction on the climb or having to descend the same road bike later on my rim brakes. Standing there, I seriously thought about turning around. It would have been the easy decision. Instead, I took a deep breath, pointed the bike uphill, and kept going. Climbing loose gravel on a road bike is much harder than climbing pavement, and I still had another mile ahead of me. This was the moment everything changed. Reaching the end of the gravel climb gave me a real sense of accomplishment. I knew the hardest part of the ascent was finally behind me. There wouldn't be any more gravel climbs awaiting around the next corner. More importantly, my mindset changed. Up until this point, I wasn't sure if I was going to finish the ride, but standing here, I realized I could actually do it. There was still one decision left to make. I could turn around now and head back down the gravel road, or I could commit to the original goal and keep riding all the way to the ocean. After coming this far, there was only one choice. I was going to Watsonville. This was my first time descending Mount Madonna Road. I couldn't believe how beautiful it was. Riding through the towering redwood trees made all the hard work of the climb feel worth it. If you listen closely, you'll hear my brakes screaming almost the entire way down. I'm riding an older Cannondale Super 6 Evo with carbon wheels and rim brakes, so long descents like this really put the rim brakes to the test. This descent definitely opened my eyes to the advantages of disc brakes. They offer more consistent braking, especially on long, steep hills like this one. After this ride, I started to understand why so many cyclists have made the switch. Even with the noise and the nerves, it was hard not to appreciate how incredible this road was. Looking back, I didn't fully appreciate this view while I was riding. I was so focused on the road ahead that I almost missed how incredible it was. This corner turned out to be one of my favorite moments of the entire ride. As the redwood trees opened up, I finally got my first panoramic view overlooking Watsonville. It was the first time I could really see how far I'd come, and it reminded me why I love exploring new bike rides. Sometimes it's worth slowing down for a moment to take it all in. I'm going to skip ahead a few miles here because I want to keep this video focused on the highlights of the ride. The stretch between here and the beach was mostly uneventful, so rather than show every mile, let's jump ahead to what I came all the way to see, the Pacific Ocean. We made it to the beach. Let's go. We're about 28 miles. I originally stopped here to capture some cinematic B-roll of the beach, but I ended up finding something even better, a story. While I was filming, I met Barry, a local surfer who's been in these waters for most of his life. He told me the waves were especially big this day, which is why he decided to surf here instead of his usual spot closer to Santa Cruz. It's moments like these that remind me why I enjoy exploring new places. Sometimes the best part of the ride isn't the destination, it's the people you meet along the way. We're going to pick back up the ride near the end of the return climb. By this point, the fatigue was definitely settling in. If you look at the telemetry data, you'll see my heart rate climbing into the 170s as I pushed towards the summit. Reaching the top for the second time felt like a huge relief. I knew the hardest climbing of the day was finally behind me, and all that stood between me and home was one last challenge, the gravel descent. I'll admit, I was more nervous about riding down the gravel than I was climbing up it. Descending loose gravel on a road bike with rim brakes isn't exactly ideal. So I took it slow, stayed focused, and made my way down one section at a time. This was the final stretch of gravel road. As soon as my tires touched the pavement again, you can see my speed jump almost immediately. It was a great feeling knowing the toughest part of the ride was finally behind me. By this point, I knew I was going to make it home. After over 4,000 feet of climbing, miles of unfamiliar roads, and a gravel section I had never experienced, the sense of accomplishment was hard to put into words. I'm recording this voiceover just 2 days after the ride, and looking back, this was one of the most rewarding and liberating rides I had ever been on. It pushed me further than I thought I could go, and reminded me that some of the best adventures begin by taking the road you've never ridden before. Thanks for coming along for the ride, and I'll see you in the next one.